Lessons from Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, What Wins Out of Reps or Talent, and Systems Capture, my essay on why people act the way they do in certain systems. So thank you for tuning into this episode of the podcast, episode 3. A bit of a slow couple of weeks, but I'm getting back into it. So thanks for checking it out. So first off, I just finished this book, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Highly underrated, I think. I have heard of it because a lot of self-help gurus and stuff say it's really, really good. And I completely agree. I think it's a fantastic book. I think it draws some really good experiences from someone who survived some pretty horrific things. And I've read other books on the Holocaust. Everyone has. And the thing that I think separates this one and why I think it should be more widely read and pretty much taught in schools is the concept of meaning and why we need it and what kind of plagues society these days. And I think meaninglessness is one of those things. I think it's a horrible thing that hurts a lot of people. And I think it's the reason we have a lot of apathy, nihilism, and there's a lot of things that are going wrong in society that can be attributed to meaninglessness because people don't feel like they have that meaning, that purpose. So let's tear it down. And I think it's a really good way to see suffering. And if you are suffering, how do you derive meaning from it? How do you get through instead of just giving up and dying? And there's some really great examples in the book about people who were in the Holocaust and they'd just given up. And they'd given up because they had set expectations that were not met. And a lot of the time so one interesting factor was that people died more in the lead up to Christmas than any other time. And the camp doctors, this was in Auschwitz, and the doctors couldn't explain it through less food, poorer hygiene. It was the same conditions all the way through. They didn't have any better or worse conditions than previously, yet they had a higher rate of death at Christmas time. And what Viktor Frankl attributes this to is the fact that a lot of people had this expectation. They built up in their heads and had the rumor mill saying that the war is coming to an end and we're going to be free by Christmas. And then as it gets to Christmas and there's no news that says that they're going to be free by Christmas time, they just give up. They just give up and die. They'd lost meaning. They'd lost purpose. So I think it's a really good way of looking at the world. It's an interesting one because it provides a counter narrative to traditional psychoanalysis, which I don't really want to go into because I'm not a therapist. So whilst I have an interest in psychology, I obviously don't have any degrees in the subject. But it's a really, really good breakdown. It talks about how the things we strive for often become out of our reach purely because of the fact we strive for them. Things like sleep are an example. You're trying to sleep, and if you're sitting there just like, oh, I need to go to sleep because I've got to wake up in 5 hours, you are then not going to achieve sleep because you're putting so much pressure on yourself to get it. And then when you stop and you just let the focus be on, well, I'm going to try and stay awake, you can invert it, and then you just kind of fall asleep. But it's a really, really good book because it talks about how to actually achieve meaning. So I've got a couple of takeaways for how to find purpose and meaning in life. And he talks about the 3 ways that you mainly derive meaning. And one of the ways is that you do it through building something, do it through work, do it through a project. And that can be, I guess, maybe a business or a community organization or something. You're working towards a goal, something higher than yourself. The second way is that you, through someone you meet or someone you love. Now, often this is romantic love. You find your partner or whatever. And he said that helped a lot of people through, in particularly the Holocaust and through the concentration camps, because you remember your wife, you're trying to get back to your wife. Personally, I can't think of anything more terrifying at the thought of is you being in one concentration camp and your wife being in another and nothing you can do about it. I don't know how I would handle that situation. But anyway, deriving meaning from you staying through so that you can get back to the people that you love the most and that love you the most. There's a terrific amount of meaning in that. And that doesn't need to be through suffering, doesn't need to be in a Holocaust situation. It can just be literally, I'm living because I love my kids. I'm working because I love my kids. That can be your meaning. That can be your purpose. And I think that's a really good one, is through love. Another one that I think is really really good is, the third way that people find meaning is through suffering. And I've seen this before. This is why people who often will think the hardest thing they've ever done is the most critical defining thing for them. You see it all the time. People who have run a marathon, an ultra marathon, you ask them what is the most defining moment of their life, they say that. Could it have been the most traumatic and hard thing they've ever done? Absolutely it could. It probably was. It was probably incredibly difficult, but it was. And that's why people who have done selection and special forces, they get very protective of it. And it's probably looked back upon as their defining moment in their life because they achieved something hard. And there was an incredible amount of suffering at the time, but they derived a huge amount of meaning out of it. It actually meant something because it was the hardest thing you've ever done. And I saw an episode of, I think it was Jordan Peterson on Sean Ryan talking about the same thing. He's talking about buds. And he said, well, how did you feel about it? Was it meaningful to you? And he said, absolutely. And that hard things is a huge amount of meaning. And I think it's a really good point. And it kind of goes into my Choose Violence essay that I wrote the other day. This actually would have been a really great book to incorporate into me talking about that on that other podcast, but you should definitely go check it out if you hadn't already. It's in episode 2. And in that I go into the details about Adrian Carton-DeWyatt versus Kurt Vonnegut. Adrian Carton-DeWyatt was in the Boer War, First World War, Second World War, shot 8 times, survived 2 plane crashes, tunneled out of a POW camp, and then said, frankly, I'd enjoyed the war. He chose that. He derived an incredible amount of meaning from that. And he wrote his memoirs and then was an aide to Winston Churchill versus someone who basically didn't have that same meaning through suffering and found it incredibly traumatic and basically just survived and didn't really thrive through it. So I find it a really interesting match. So I was just thinking about that concept and how choice defines whether or not it derives meaning for you, but I didn't put it in those words. But now, having read the book, I think it's a really good way of putting it, is finding that meaning, finding that purpose, and you can find that through suffering. And yeah, it's good because it leans into my concept of choosing to do hard things, which is part of the reason why I'm doing this, right? It's something hard. Putting yourself out there on the internet is hard. Risking looking like an idiot is hard. Changing that identity of what I have about myself, being a competent person, achieving things, achieving what I've achieved in my work, getting my master's degree, providing for my family all these years, to then step into an arena where I'm basically a rookie and sit here, put any videos of myself on the internet. It's a hard thing to do, but I'm deriving an incredible amount of meaning from it. And I truly appreciate everyone who tunes in and actually watches. So thank you so much. But there's a really good line. It's one of the last lines of the book, and I will read it out because I think it's just a fantastic line. I think it's so powerful. And it's why we should all keep going despite potential bad things on the horizon. We talk about AI. Is it all over for us? Is there any point in starting a business now because AI is going to disrupt it in 2 years? Maybe less. Is there any point in doing anything now because AI is going to disrupt it? But this line I'll leave you with. So he's talking about the minority. And he says, and he's talking about decent people here, but I also talk about it as these are good and virtuous people he's talking about. But I also put it in terms of success because I think it applies massively. And so wouldn't it suffice to say, just to refer to decent people, it is true that they form a minority. More than that, they always will remain a minority. And yet I see therein the very challenge to join the minority. For the world is in a bad state, but everything will become still worse unless each of us does his best. So, and then there's the last bit, which I actually think is quite good, but I'll read it. So let us be alert in a twofold sense. Since Auschwitz, we know what man is capable of, and since Hiroshima, we know what is at stake. So I think it's a great line. I think there's a lot of angst in the world at the moment. A lot of people calling out the people who have things, wealth, money, status, and they're calling it out and saying it's inequitable, it's wrong, you shouldn't have it, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, wouldn't you rather strive to be one of them, even if not everyone can do it? Because the world becomes better when we all try to build things instead of tear them down. And I think when you try to tear things down, you're just trying to hope that in the card reshuffle of the card game we're playing, you get dealt a better hand. But I think a lot of the time you'll find that if you restart the game, someone will be holding all the aces and it won't be any of us. So it'll be whoever's restructuring the game. So that's why I think it's important to strive and important to do your best at all times. Um, I think that's all I've got to say on Man's Search for Meaning, other than the fact I think it should be absolutely on everyone's reading list. You should definitely pick up a copy and read it if you're struggling with anything in life, particularly if you have something that's really hard, or you're finding that you think life is stacked against you and things are really bad. There's a really good framework for how to look at it and how to get meaning from it. I think it's incredibly valuable. So yeah, I can't rate it highly enough. Definitely pick up a copy. Which brings me on to kind of in the same vein of doing hard things, but kind of not really, is this video I filmed the other day, and it got a little bit of traction. I got some nice response, which was cool. Not huge, but hey, it was a good little hit out, I think. And it's the concept of what is better, reps or talent. And I think reps beat talent every day of the week. And I'll elaborate on this because I did a short and I talked about it for 2 minutes straight, and I probably could have talked about it for 10 minutes. But I think it's a really handy way to look at things because we tell ourselves stories all the time. We tell ourselves these concepts and these frameworks, and then we overlay them through our experiences. We find out what they tell us, and then they go into the overall story of things, right? But when you look at talent versus reps, if you are not good at something, that doesn't matter. That doesn't really make a difference. What actually matters is the amount of repetitions you do. So the analogy I use is if you have a beginner class of anything, think going to the range and shooting a gun. And you've got people that have never done that before. They're all lined up, get a gun for the first time, and they're shooting at targets. And you've got a beginner art class. These are the two examples I use. But you've got a beginner art class and no one's touched an easel and a brush before. And out of each group, there's going to be maybe one person who's really good, who's just actually better than the rest. And everybody looks at what the work they do, or in the range, they see that person can actually hit the target and everyone else is missing massively and they have no idea what they're doing. And one person just seems to naturally have the gift, bit of talent, if you will. And everyone says, whoa, you're really good. Have you done this before? Whoa, how do you know how to do this? This is awesome. Oh, you must have done this before a lot. And that gets into the brain. People think, oh. And I think this is a little bit of the curse of competence. If you are competent at things, you get this a lot. And you paint something in art class and it looks pretty good. And people say, that's amazing, you're really good. And even the teachers and instructors say, oh, they're surprised because they look at everyone else who sucks and they see one person who's actually doing well and they go, huh, that's pretty good. You're actually not bad, not half bad. Okay, I can dig it. But the thing is, that doesn't mean you're done. That doesn't mean you're there. You can't take that same painting that you did in beginner art class and everyone said was amazing. It was amazing for a beginner. It was amazing for someone who's never done it before. But that doesn't mean it can go into a gallery and you can put $1,000 on it and say, hey, this is a genius work of art. You've still got to do 1,000 repetitions, probably, before you get to the point where you can be professional at it. And the same with that person on the range. They're not going to be that good that they can outshoot an elite marksman in a shooting competition. It's just not going to happen. They've still got to do so much practice and training and thousands of rounds and repetitions to get there. They might have less to do than someone who completely sucks, but does that mean that person can't get there? No, it just means they've got to do more reps. But the rep difference might not be as much as you think. It might only be the person with talent needs 1,000 reps, but the person with no talent needs 1,050 reps. But the differentiator is the ability to do that 1,000 reps. Because if you can get to 1,000 reps, there's probably not much you can't do, and you're probably going to be pretty good. So the danger in that is that competent person, that talented person gets told, hey, you're really good. And then they can kind of skate. They kind of cruise through life because they don't need to put in that much effort. They don't need to really put in the effort to pass the tests. They can just cruise through and get an easy A in art because they're good at it, right? And it doesn't give them the drive to work at it to become good. Unless they're talented and they're hardworking and they're driven, then they can achieve the world, right? That's the difference between the top, the absolute pinnacle of success, and the people who don't. And we all have genetic factors that mean that some of us are probably never going to be good at, say, basketball if you're not tall or whatever. But to a degree, where things are skill based, musical instruments, intellectual pursuits, skill based things, talking shooting or art or something like that, you can absolutely get good via repetition. And I think it's huge for confidence because once you know how to get good at one thing, you know how to get good at anything. And I've seen that with people who were truly good at something. If they were truly good at a skill based activity, there's a confidence that they take over to the rest of their life. And there's a competence that they can use across everything and actually learn how to do things really well. So it's one of the things I highly recommend to people is find something and just become very good at it through repetition, through smart repetition. Don't just do it wrong 1,000 times. Get feedback, iterate, do better each time, get expert advice, learn how to do something. I think it's a really crucial thing to do. But back to the reps versus talent thing. The kind of talent, I think, can kind of become irrelevant if you take this mindset. If you take that growth mindset and you think, doesn't matter what you're good at, just do it enough times that you can't fail. You're going to win. You're going to get there. So just do it. And that's part of why I've been doing the 100-day challenge is just get better at talking on camera. It's just reps. Am I naturally gifted on camera? No. But am I doing it so much that I'm getting better? Maybe, yeah. So, and how much better am I going to be? I've done 20 days in a row now. Technically 10 because I had to start again because I missed a day. I did film it, didn't post. But anyway. But when I get to that 100 days, I'm going to be miles ahead of where I was, where I started. And that's, I think, what it takes to succeed in anything. And because I think I've been truly good at certain things before. I've learnt skills and gotten really, really good where people tell you, hey, you're really good at that. And because I've done that, I can go, well, all right, how can I apply that to something else? And to be honest, it's reps. I think it's just reps. And I did see David Goggins talking about this. He said, I'm not that smart. I'm not that talented. I'm not really good at anything. So I got to work. I just got to do the reps, put in the work. And man, you can't deny that. I think it's a really good lesson for life. So to recap that, find meaning in life. You can find meaning through suffering, you can find meaning through love, and you can find meaning through building something. And building something, having a purpose, trying, give it a go, and you'll find incredible meaning. If you're lost and you don't know what you're doing with your life and you're feeling depressed and you're not achieving goals, just find something you kind of half want to do and then give it a crack and exhaust all means getting there. And then if it doesn't work, I'd rather you get there to realize that's not what you want to do. But you can't do that until you get there. You got to get there, achieve the goal, and then say, you know what, actually, this isn't for me. Because if you do that beforehand, that's just cope. It's not. There's certain things that you might find are not worth pursuing, and it is very valid to know when to quit. But if it's something you truly want, you just got to be aware if you quit and then say it's because, oh, it wasn't worth it, or I don't want to do it anyway. I didn't actually really want it that much. Is that cope, or are you making an actual decision, which is valid that, hey, actually, that it was going to destroy my family if I kept down this path? Do you know what I mean? So maybe I want to be a billionaire. Do you actually want to be a billionaire? Because that means an extreme amount of work. It is the 1% of the 1% of the 1% that can achieve that goal. And that's through business, something that scales. And that's going to take a lot of time and a lot of reps and a lot of work to build. And I don't think you can build something like that without sacrificing a lot of other things. So do you realize at a certain point you're going to lose your family and not do that? Fine. That makes sense. But if you're just quitting something that's semi-hard because I gave it a couple of goes and I didn't hit success, is that just cope? So it's about knowing where you stand on that. And definitely try. The world is better for every individual person trying to do their best. And whether that's be the best person they can, be the most virtuous, ethical, moral person they can, or being the most achieved. Because I think you can't be a failure, and I don't mean this in a derogatory sense, but if you haven't achieved anything in life, you haven't made a success of yourself, you haven't achieved any kind of material success, how are you then going to be able to impart your view and voice in the world? You don't have that experience, you don't have that knowledge, you've just got some ideas. But I think to actually make a change for better or worse, you need to have those resources. Well, you can make a change for the worse if you have no money and you make no money, but because anyone can burn something down, but it takes special kind of people to build things. And I think building things is better for everybody. And yeah, I'll finish off by reading my last essay. I was going to do this as an individual video. The male biological clock did quite well, but the choose violence one did not. And I'm a little bit worried that if I do the way that I was going to do it, which is just read an essay in video format, it's not really structured like a YouTube video. I'm kind of breaking the fourth wall here, but so I'll read it in the podcast because it's a bit more of a thing. If you're listening to my podcast at this point, you're strapped in anyway. You'll listen to me talk for a bit longer and listen to my essay. I will be, just FYI, putting this up on a Substack at some point when I get some time. I'll put all my written essays because they work better as essays than they do videos, and then I'll look to rework the ideas into videos. But anyway, system capture, why you need systems thinking. There's a Charlie Munger quote that says, "Show me the incentives, I'll show you the behavior." Incentives shape actions. And it's a call to say that we shouldn't just expect better. We need to design better systems to achieve optimal outcomes. Once I started to notice this and think in systems, I see this everywhere. I see it in military, in politics, and in the corporate workplaces, which makes me think it's a near universal rule, as much as any universal rule or principle. People are largely a concoction of Pavlovian responses to external stimuli. We're all walking, talking products of reward and punishment. If we do something and the reward is pain, we stop it. If the action is rewarded, we keep doing it. This shapes much of our behavior. There is still much of us, our demeanor, proclivities, and personality that we are born with. I'm not saying we're purely nurture over nature, but we are undeniably conditioned in no small part by our environments. This happens professionally. Our workplace rewards certain behaviors, so we do them to garner good yearly reports and promotions and pay rises. This happens personally. I get an attaboy for doing the dishes. I'm more likely to do them again. The dopamine system works quietly in the background, influencing our behavior in very subtle ways. So think about this. When I see a politician make a questionable choice that doesn't seem to be in the interest of the people or of the country, I question what incentives drive that decision. This is particularly the main reason why election promises are so seldom kept. Once in the office, you are shaped by donors, party considerations, diplomatic considerations, and behind closed doors briefings of national security that you weren't privy to before taking up the role. This inevitably shapes behavior and makes you vote for legislation that might not align with your personal values because you need to be a team player or you compromise this one for the bigger win later. Or you see officers in the military make decisions and think, I would never do that. But wouldn't you? If you had the same training, the same bosses, the same incentives, and the same promotions and job roles that you desperately wanted on the line, maybe you would. They say everyone has their price. And the mavericks, rebels, and freethinkers often get selected out of these organizations because you can't get promoted bucking the trends, procedures of your predecessors who are often the ones who report on you. It was Cialdini who wrote that people like people who are like them or like people they aspire to be. So it naturally progresses that bosses will report better on people they like and are more like themselves. This leads to an organization where the leaders are all in an echo chamber of sorts, everyone drinking the Kool-Aid from the person above them, kind of like a Kool-Aid human centipede. Another military observation, every rank level thinks they'll be able to affect change at the next rank level. That's where I'll get some real power and influence. Only to get the promotion and realize that the system beats you into yelling at soldiers for having their hands in their pockets because that's what the system rewards. You never think you'll be a sergeanty sergeant until you're a sergeant and need to do sergeant things. Stack on top of this, the broader economic incentives, uh, broader systemic incentives. No one wants to rebel because housing is so expensive and everyone has a huge mortgage. How brave do you feel and how rebellious are you prepared to be when your family relies on your income to keep making payments on your family home? Show me the incentives, I'll show you the behavior. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not here to be an apologist for politicians and bad military officers. No, I'm here to analyze what can actually be done about it, what's actionable. Firstly, it is only by understanding these underlying incentives that we can hope to change them. Second, by picking our battles. We see that the problem with a lot of these systems is that they are robust and resilient. They are self-healing and don't break easily. Things like governments, corporations, and military keep the lights on. They keep ticking along. Do they always kick goals and crush it? No, but they keep turning regardless of whether leadership is competent or incompetent. This also means that by design, they can't be changed easily. If anyone who stepped into a leadership role could completely change the whole system, it wouldn't be very resilient. Big ships take a while to turn around and need a lot of energy to do so. But also, we can personally hack this, set ourselves up for success. But deciding in advance what our red lines are, we know what forces we will face if we decide to step into any of those arenas. Can you inoculate yourself by giving yourself freedom, have a side hustle that buys you a way out, or have enough of a buffer in your savings to be able to take a risk, have a paid off mortgage? All of these are easier said than done, I know, but it's worth thinking about in a world where values can shift and you find yourself vulnerable to doing stuff you don't really want to do. Another way to hack this is to set yourself up for success within your own systems. If you plan gym time into your day, for example, let's say you set up a routine so that 6 a.m. on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays is your gym time. You just go. From there, you train. Because once you're at the gym, what else are you going to do? If you just hope that you'll get time to do something or go sometime this week, it's unlikely that you will. If you plan time and space to write, you write. If you just hope that time opens up in your calendar for gym or writing or whatever pursuits you're chasing, it's far less likely. A soldier's kit is a system. The infantry soldier whose magazines are lined up all facing the right way eliminates the possibility of inserting a magazine the wrong way and looking like an idiot at the range, best case, and being killed by the enemy in the worst. The bomb tech who has an organized bag and tools all prepared reduces the chances of losing something or getting something wrong when the chips are down and the bomb is live. Soldiers understand systems at the basic level and learn those lessons. So whether it's a government, a platoon, or your gym routine, the principle is the same. Systems shape behavior. The question is whether you're consciously designing yours or just reacting to someone else's. Since I started thinking in systems, my productivity has gone through the roof. I create more, I write more, I work out more, I sleep more, and now I sit in the driver's seat, not just hoping that I do better, hoping that my life improves. I also don't harbor as much resentment toward people I disagree with. I'm more empathetic to their situation because I see the likely incentives that drove their behavior in the first place. So use systems to your advantage and engineer your life to achieve your goals. Understand that most people are subject to systems and incentives, and you can be slightly less resentful about the world. Design yours so that someone doesn't design them for you. So that's my essay on systems thinking and episode 3 of my podcast. Really appreciate if you've listened all the way through. It's been good. I'm really enjoying it, and we'll get to another one pretty soon.